Deep right field. Down the line it goes. Castellanos is out of room. It's out of runner goes. 3-2 pitch hit down the line. Is it fair? It is a fair ball. Into the corner. Off and running. Chu. Yu Chang around third. He's going to score easily. And into second. Hit hard. Hit deep. Up and out. Goes Amed Rosario. And there's a fly ball. Left field. It's deep. It's up. It's gone to the porch. Hit pretty well. Deep left center field. It is gone to Souvenir City.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Guardians of the CLE podcast. I'm your host, Max Goldstein, joined as always by my co-host, Mel Kirby. And Mel, the trade deadline finally wrapped up. We had a lot of speculation in going into the deadline as to what we were going to be doing as a team. Not much came to fruition. I mean, I think we only made one move for a reliever from Minnesota. We sent Sandy Leon, who was barely a part of the team to this point. So kind of just wanted to hear what your thoughts were. It was pretty packed trade deadline surrounding the MLB, but for the Guardians, not many moves. Was that expected?
Yeah, I mean, I think me, as well as I'm sure most of the fan base, probably got our hopes up. Just being one game back of first place, obviously we need help in the starting rotation. That's no surprise. I don't think in any ideal world you want Brian Shaw opening every fifth game. But we had the same discussion in the offseason. Why didn't they make any moves? They have this 40-man roster crunch. Well, the same thing's happening now, right? We have another 40-man roster crunch coming December. And, that's what they said from spring training on. This was going to be a season about evaluating the kids, seeing which of these prospects they want to keep and which they can trade. And, to their credit, at least they're doing that. Tyler Freeman just got called up today, and he was the guy I said he needs to be called up immediately. There's absolutely, because I was pissed. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was one of the fans that was pissed. I watched deals go on. I understand not wanting to cripple the farm system. They were never going to get Juan Soto. Obviously, we saw San Diego gave up a haul for him. They were never going to do anything like that. But when I see the moves, for Tyler Mahle, some of those deals they could have made and still had plenty of prospect depth to still be competitive this year and into the future as well. So that stuff was frustrating because Aaron Civale can't stay on the field. Zach Plesac and Cal Quantrill have not been very good, definitely not consistent. And even Tristan McKenzie, he's still young enough where he's up and down. He's inconsistent, right? And Shane Bieber's pretty much your sure thing. And I don't know, one thing I will give them credit for is they did move Ernie Clement to the minors. They did take Franmil Reyes out of the lineup. Not that these are deadline moves, because I always think it's a bad idea when organizations get tricked into thinking that the answers, the reinforcements are already within their organization. I just think for a young team, it does so much you battled all season. You've grinded out W's to see a Tyler Mahle, some sort of reinforcement come through the doors. Like, hey, I'm here. I'm here. I'm going to start every fifth day. Let's do this thing. I think that could really boost a young team up. I mean, obviously, when Chris Antonetti and Tito were talking yesterday, they were saying kind of the exact opposite, that they didn't mess with the team chemistry. And Tito was saying some nonsense about muddying the waters and this and that, all this stuff that basically he just didn't want any major deals to get done. And Tito's old school too, right? He's got a lot of roster juggling. I just feel bad for the fans. I feel like they could have done something. Again, like a starting pitcher would not have blocked any of these top prospects. We kind of are in a dry spell as far as starting pitching prospects go, to kind of bridge us from the Shane Biebers, the Plesacs, and the Civales over to the Daniel Espinos, the Gavin Williams, who aren't going to be ready till at least mid-year next year. So in my opinion, you still have a long enough window where you could have brought in a starter and it wouldn't have messed with your philosophy of blocking these young kids. So that's the frustrating part. But, on the flip side, I still think we're going to stay in the race. I still think this is going to be a super fun team to watch. There's a lot of lovable guys on this roster, and this is what we got moving forward. Let's make the best of it.
Yeah, it sort of seems like it was like a same story, different day, right? We went into spring training thinking like, oh, we got to make a move. We got to bolster up this outfield. We got to get some, additional infielders. There was a lot of question marks surrounding the roster going into the season. And what Chris Antonetti kept on preaching was like, hey, we're going to give these young guys a shot. There's a reason they're in our farm system, and we've been developing with them the past couple of years. Might as well give them some playing time, right? And I think it's the same sort of thing at this trade deadline is like, look at how far these young guys have come, right? And Tito, and you were just saying about how Chris Antonetti was talking about that chemistry, and you were saying bringing a guy in like another starting pitcher like Tyler Mahle was going to give them a boost. But on the other side of the spectrum, you can say like, hey, they didn't make any big moves. None of these guys that have been adding to the success of this season were shipped off. And this could be, showing the faith that you guys can go out and win a division title. You guys can go make some damage in the playoffs as well. So it's sort of, that middle ground there.
The one thing that frustrates me is when I hear people defend the inactivity by saying, oh, well, we weren't supposed to contend this year. It's fine. And I just think that's such a lame duck excuse, because bottom line is you are contending. And it's not like, I was texting you earlier. It's not like this team hasn't evaluated talent while contending before. I mean, look at Tampa Bay. They do it pretty much every season, right? Yeah. They're consolidating prospects. They're getting, some veterans in there, even if they are rentals. They got guys to come up and replace them. They don't re-sign most of these guys. They went out and got Nelson Cruz last year. But I think the panic set in once it started ticking closer to 6:00 and the Twins started making all those moves, because the biggest thing with the Twins was their pitching. But I also don't think the Twins added anybody who seriously moves the needle. Like they didn't go get a Juan Soto or, Luis Castillo even, where it's like, all right, like that drastically improves them. We should probably, nothing's probably going to happen. We're not going to be able to make a run this year. I still like our chances. The bullpen's coming around, right? You have James Karinchak and Nick Sandlin. Again, I've been saying for weeks, Eli Morgan is a sixth inning guy. He gave up a, change up right down the middle today, 2-run homer in garbage time in the 9th. And that's been happening. Teams are just sitting on his changeup. But that aside, you have the bullpen. Everybody's kind of falling into place in front of Emmanuel Clase. And Cody Morris is starting tonight at Columbus.
Right.
He's been out all season. And if he wouldn't have got injured, he's a guy who would have been in this rotation already, with all the injuries to Aaron Savali. But the bottom line is, if they can just kind of piece together that starting rotation, I still think, if they get through August and they just tread water, September's a cakewalk compared to the schedule they have this month coming up. And that's what it's going to be about. Sometimes you just tread water through an 162 game season.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And then when you mentioned about that lame excuse of not being a contender going into the season, and that's an excuse for not getting things done at the deadline, I can understand why fans, around this franchise are frustrated, because if you look at the AL and all the teams that we would be competing with, before a World Series, it's right now, currently we're a game back in the wild card. Ahead of us is Tampa Bay, Seattle, and Toronto. 3 teams right there that we can easily match up with in any given playoff series. But then ahead of that, right now it's Minnesota. Hopefully that is going to be labeled as Cleveland at the end of the season. Let's just say Minnesota gets knocked out of this running. For now, you have Houston and New York, right? And it just comes down to some crazy set of events that you can go out. If you track all the way back to, I'm forgetting the year, it may have been like 2015 or something. We go in 2017, we go into New York, we win the first 2 games out of a 3-game series. Like, who knows, right? If you draw those teams, anything can happen. And then you were saying that September is like a cakewalk of a schedule. Imagine what kind of schedule you'd be facing if Toronto and Seattle were Toronto, Seattle, and Houston were the only teams, standing in your way of a World Series run.
And that's the thing too. I mean, look at the Atlanta Braves last year.
Mm-hmm.
They made what appeared to be minor moves at the deadline, right? They knew they needed to beef up their outfield. They went out and did that. They got Adam Duvall, Eddie Rosario, and Jorge Soler. They still were only an 88 win team. They got hot at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
and you get into October baseball and anything can happen. I don't think anybody expected them to beat the Brewers and the Dodgers back to back last season. And that's why, like, I saw people yesterday and they're like, you're never going to beat Houston or the Yankees this year. And that may be the case, but like New York hasn't done much of anything in the last decade, and they've had some pretty damn good teams. It's just like the Guardians in 2017. They were the favorites. We had that team where people are like, no one's beating the Guardians or the Indians at the time. No one's beating the Indians this year, right? We got swept out in the first round. That's just how October baseball goes. You manage the game differently. And that's what worries me. That's, while we're still on this topic, that's kind of the one thing that I'm like, you kind of need, you would really love to have a couple veterans down the stretch who've been here before they've done that, besides Jose Ramirez. But these kids, a lot of them, this is going to be the most games they've ever played in a season. And it's not unfair to expect them to kind of fade out a little bit as we get closer to the end of the season. And I was talking with somebody about Bo Naylor yesterday, and before I say this, like, I love Bo Naylor. I think Bo Naylor is outstanding, and he is without a doubt our catcher of the future. But Bo Naylor also isn't going to catch 162 games next year, right? He's not going to catch all 9 innings every single game and never get a day off. That's why I didn't see any issue, obviously depending on the price, because a lot of reports that came out after the fact said how this was a seller's market and the buyers just didn't want to bite at the price. And I know they were seriously in on Sean Murphy yesterday. Like the front office was a little split, but a lot of guys really liked the idea of Sean Murphy kind of mentoring Bo Naylor. And Sean Murphy had enough control left to where you could still flip him, right? You could flip him a year or two into that deal and you could still, regain some of that prospect capital. But that just goes to show that rookies can be outstanding. These top prospects, some pan out, some don't. And I understand wanting to hold on to like the top 5-10 guys. But it also doesn't hurt, especially when you have a log jam like this and the rest of the league knows you have all these guys that have to go on the 40-man roster. And when you wait until the last minute, you lose your leverage. Right. Because all these teams are like, yeah, I could give you all this for, I don't know, Peyton Battenfield or Hunter Gaddis or Will Brennan, but I'm just going to wait until the Rule 5 draft because we know you have to add him. So that's like the one downside I see is I'm just going to be curious moving forward which of these rookies kind of hit a wall. But there's enough of them up here right now where, you should be able to spell guys.
Look, if we can keep riding the wave of these young guys just, coming in, winning games for us, making game-winning plays and just producing, right? Like Oscar Gonzalez today, right? He had a 2-run home run and almost 2 of them actually. His RBI double. Yeah, his RBI double was about 7 inches from going over the wall. So, and then obviously, Stephen Kwan is a story in himself. But if we can get other guys rolling and just keep this same sort of mantra of just going into each and every game saying this is 9 innings and this is our game. Who knows where we're going to be.
And Stephen Kwan extended his hit streak to 17 games today. And him and Tyler Freeman kind of have a similar hit profile. And sure enough, when Tyler Freeman got called up today, Andre Knott was reporting he's been kind of attached to Stephen Kwan. And, obviously they played together at Akron and Columbus. So, they know each other well. But I thought it was funny too. I wish the Guardians social media account would do a better job of posting like call-up videos, like the Orioles did for Adley Rutschman. Like some of those are so cool. And Tyler Freeman actually had a really cool story about his that, he was playing last night. He hits a single and the right fielder botches the ball. So he moves up to second base. And then, after he played defense, he came out and Andy Tracy, the Columbus manager, is like, yeah, you really didn't hustle on that single there. So, we're going to have to pull you out of the game, like take a seat on the bench. And he let him sit in it for a minute. And he's like, I hope you're thinking how you're going to get to Cleveland tonight because you're going up to the big leagues.
Wow.
And he's like, I thought he was messing with me. And I think that stuff would be so cool if we could see some of that on videos. I mean, we've had 12 guys make their major league debuts this year. Like, and some of them Like Nolan Jones, I think they told him he was going down to AA to get more outfield reps. And he's like, AA? Like, what? So like some of these call-ups have had some pretty cool stories behind them.
That's
And
fun.
it's just cool that all these guys have played together, through the whole minors. Most of these guys are draft picks of ours. So I like the inner stories, and, I love just the energy this team plays with. And I don't think Tyler Freeman wiped that smile off his face all game.
Yeah.
I love seeing the families in the stands. And that's one of the benefits when you have a young team like this who, they don't, like I say, they don't know they're not supposed to win. They're going to go out and play hard every night, and they're going to steal some games they shouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, and another just fun story, it doesn't have to necessarily do with the Guardians here, but last night, the Nationals just sent Juan Soto to the Padres, got an entire haul in return. So this is a complete rebuild mode for the Nationals. But they had a guy get called up yesterday who was making his major league debut at the age of 30 years old after spending 10 years in the minors. First big league at bat in the 7th inning as a pitch hitter, he takes a yard. I mean, like what a story to be a part of. So it's awesome. Yeah.
And, it's important to remember, too, thank God for the Jose extension, or we would have spent all day yesterday biting our nails, wondering if they were going to move Jose.
That would have been too much for me to handle for sure.
Yeah. So although we didn't add anybody, like, thank God Jose was locked up, because I don't think I could have went through all day yesterday wondering if they were going to move him or not. So there's still things to be grateful for and optimistic for as, we kind of get into what we got ahead and what we just wrapped up.
Yeah. I mean, and you did bring up, the Tyler Freeman sticking around Stephen Kwan, learning his tendencies, just being around him every day at the ballpark. I mean, is he not following suit? I think in his first at bat, he walked, and then,
he's got a low walk rate. So of course he walked.
Yeah. And then did you see what he did with that pitch outside? He just slapped it the other way, almost got a double out of it, but smartly just took his base. And, hopefully we continue to see more of that. But busy trade deadline, didn't end up the way some fans wanted, certainly not the way Mel and I wanted it to end up, but this is the team going forward. And, hopefully we end up having an October to remember this year. And I actually do think we will. I think it's going to be a very exciting end to the season. I think these young guys are going to propel us back into the postseason. And, that's what it's all about. Cleveland baseball in October. It's a fun time to, be around. But let's just take a recap of what's happened since basically the All-Star break, right? I mean, we come out, we're basically 500 going out of that All-Star break, and we split the last 2 series with Boston and Tampa. 2 series, in my opinion, that got away. So I'm kind of, just
we
wondering
won
what
the series. We won the series in Tampa. We split Boston, though.
Excuse me. We split Boston.
So we went 6-5 heading out of the break, which. Right. I mean, it's not often you come out of the All-Star break and you have an 11-game road trip. Like, that scheduling's pretty brutal, as it has been all season with all the rainouts and doubleheaders. But splitting in Boston, I would have loved to, take 3 there.
Yeah.
The Red Sox were down bad. Like, they could have really, I know the Red Sox did some buying and selling, but they could have really, beat up on their morale while they were in town. But just once again, Cal Quantrill, and he did the same thing the other night, and it's getting so exhausting. Like every single time this team gives him a cushion, he immediately gives it right back up. And he did the exact same thing on Wednesday in Boston, right? And I was arguing with people up and down. If you remember, Bobby Dahlbeck had a 2-run homer off Cal Quantrill early in the game on Wednesday. Cal didn't have it the entire game. He went 5 1/3 innings, I think, but every single inning he had traffic on the bases. I think he almost gave up a run in almost every inning too. And then Tito trots him out for the 6th, and who's he facing? Bobby Dahlbeck. And I'm like, no, listen, I get it. I understand. They're in the middle of a long stretch. You want to keep your bullpen fresh. There comes a time too where you got to win the game right in front of you. We're in the second half of the season now. This is the stretch run. It's not April and May anymore. And especially against a team that's also in the race right behind you, those games matter.
Yeah.
There's no way that everybody on Twitter knew Cal shouldn't have went out for that 6th inning, and Tito didn't know that. His sole purpose was, we got to save that bullpen. Go get bodies from AAA if you have to for the weekend. I don't really care. You got to win that game. And then, thank God they ended up coming back and winning that game. Miles Straw had the big RBI double to deep, deep center in the 8th.
Oh, yeah.
Josh Naylor does what he does best. He attacked the green monster, hit it out of here in the 9th inning. And that dude just has ice in his veins.
Man, he's so consistent, especially in late innings. I just love watching a Guardians game. And then when Andres Jimenez comes up to the plate in the 9th, or Josh Naylor or Steven Kwan, they're just like, oh, look, this guy hits 500 in the 7th inning or later.
Yeah.
It's like, it's awesome to have that confidence with those guys coming up to the plate. And you were mentioning that, Tito, this is like the 15th time he's just let a guy out there.
Just punted the game.
And it kind of just gets me thinking, like, is he doing it to show them that if you can't get it done now, I'm not going to trust you in October? Like, if we get there at this point, there have been so many baffling decisions, but it really just, it might just be like the father figure in Tito. It's just like, I'm going to turn you into a man out here.
It was like, I think I tweeted that night too. I'm like, someone please tell Tito it's not a requirement for your starter to throw 100 pitches.
Right.
I mean, if your starter doesn't have it, he doesn't have it. I mean, look at the Diamondbacks the other night. They pulled Zach Davies in like the 3rd or 4th inning at the first sign of trouble. And they're a team not even in the race like we are.
Right.
And honestly, it's bad between the double header mismanagement, I should say. And just every single game, I feel like it's, oh, look, Tito left the starter in too long and we got burned for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to explain away. And then just the questionable use of relievers at times. Yes. Luckily Brian Shaw's been opening, so he hasn't really been available out of the pen, but he was pitching in way too many high leverage spots. It's just some of those in-game decisions. It makes me wonder if the game, is kind of outgrowing Tito. And Tito's a Hall of Fame manager. He's one of the, the winningest manager in history, in team history, but some of these in-game decisions just make you scratch your head. It's frustrating as a fan.
I mean, we'll see. You see starters get beat up all the time, and sometimes they have to length it out. Today, Garrett Cole gave up 5 runs, 6 hits, and a walk in the 1st inning, and they ended up getting blown out of this game. But he went on to pitch. I think he went a full 5, right? So it's sort of just like, is DeMarlo Hale moving forward with this franchise in years to come going to be following suit with these decisions? I don't know. They probably
I don't think it'll be him. I think they're going to try and
conversation for a different time, I guess. But it's just, look, if it keeps happening, like, we're going to be screwing ourselves out of a playoff spot here. If you leave Brian Shaw, who's starting a game, going into like the 4th or 5th inning with like 50 some pitches, second time through the lineup, you really just gotta, or 3rd time, excuse me, you just gotta know, man. It's just frustrating, and especially the fact that it keeps happening again. I'm worried it's going to happen in September and it's going to be big trouble.
And then you have like the other end of the spectrum, like Thursday, right? Jose hit that solo home run around pesky pole, gave us an early 1-0 lead. Tristan was pitching an absolute masterpiece. But then he got some traffic on the bases. Bogarts hits that 3-run homer in the 6th inning, puts him up 3-1, just like that. And Bobby Dahlbeck added another insurance run, I think, in the 7th, but Tristan was dealing. In that situation, nobody was questioning bringing him out for the 6th inning. They looked off balance all night against him, but then it still comes back. So it goes to show you're never going to get it right 100% of the time, but you kind of got to look at the game trends too. Like, is the guy heating up? Did he give up a bunch early and now he's, kind of settling in? Like Shane Bieber, like, people were tripping on Twitter Friday night because he loaded the bases in the 1st inning. But he coasted after that, went 7 innings, 8 strikeouts, only gave up the 5 hits. And, Friday was that game where it's like our stars did what they're supposed to do. Shane Bieber and Jose Ramirez, right? That's the first game Jose kind of broke out of his slump a little bit with a 2-run homer, RBI single. But think if they would have panicked and pulled Shane Bieber. But it's like that. There's the difference, though. Cal didn't have it the entire night Wednesday night. Shane Bieber quickly rebounded in the second inning, and he was good. And then Tristan had it all game, kind of ran out of gas in the sixth. So you just got to have a feel for how that particular game's going and who you have on the mound. And Cal's had a history of this for the past 2 months, right? I've been talking about his command issues since at least May.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully Cal Quantrill can pull a James Karinchak and just come out looking like an animal again, right? Like, I mean, we've seen guys have consistency issues, but, you know, as of 2-3 weeks ago, I thought, you know, Karinchak was written off, right? You know, I thought without that sticky stuff every pitcher was using a couple years back, you know, this guy isn't going to be the same pitcher. And he's been absolutely lights out. And I think that, you know, maybe Carl Willis just needs to have a sit down with Cal and be like, what are you doing? You know, just throw strikes, be efficient, and stop hanging your freaking change up right over the freaking plate. Like, the problem is with Cal is one pitch changes the entire outcome at each and every start for him. It's not a couple singles, a walk here and there. He's given up 3-run bombs multiple times throughout this season, which is just obviously on the stat line. That's not going to get it done and get your team a win.
Yeah, it made us wish we had Corey Kluber back once we saw Kluber just beat the brakes off of us on Saturday. I'm like, this changeup is killing our lineup, but he struck out 10. You know, Jimenez obviously tagged him for that 3-run homer. But, you know, Saturday's was that disappointing loss. Yandy Diaz kind of got the last laugh against his former team, adding that 2-run in the fifth to, you know, basically that was the game. The offense just didn't really have it on Saturday, but what a win to come back out on Sunday, right? A game nobody the Guardians to win. And they're the only team this year to score more than 3 against Shane McClanahan, who's obviously AL Cy Young favorite, but this game was it was perfect, like, representation of you don't have to hit the ball hard, right? Miles Straw blooped it right over the second baseman's head, scored 2 there. Austin Hedges 2-run single in the fifth. That was all you needed, you know, with Eli, Trevor, and Emmanuel Clase after that. It had you feeling really good heading home to face the D-backs. And, you know, to drum up a little more excitement, that's when they called Will Benson up too, demoted Alex Call, and, you know, people were all excited to see Will Benson, and we're starting to see, you know, these top guys getting their shot.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'll take a loss to Corey Kluber. If the Guardians are going to lose to anybody, might as well make it, you know, one of these guys. Corey Kluber spent a ton of time with this team, and to just see him, you know, I think it was a season high this year, 10 strikeouts in 5 innings for him. So look, he dominated us. He gave us a taste of, you know, what he used to be with our team. And Shane McClanahan, I think he was blindsided. I mean, I think we were just fighting off pitches. He wasn't getting the outside corner calls, and we just frustrated him. And I personally, you know, seeing the way that Brian Shaw was going out to start that game, I was actually confident, especially with that top of the first inning. Got a couple people on board, and you know, in the second inning, we just piled it on with RBIs from Jose and Miles Straw. So, look, it was a long road trip, you know, and it's just it's good to be back at home, and you know, we'll roll right into it. So Monday, Cal again, right? We win 6-5 in 11 innings, but gave up a second inning home run to Dalton Varsho. And again, look, Cal's not being sharp, and he's given up that long ball. So, you know, we've spoken a bunch about Cal Quantrill. I think it's enough for one podcast, but, you know, let's just talk about the offense and how we ended up fighting back, clawing back into that game, and ended up getting the win. So Ahmed Rosario, you know, in the third inning with a 2-run shot, that guy is really starting to heat up, and he's starting to see that
power too. Yeah.
450 today. You know, we're going to just really quickly fast track to today's game. He went dead center 450 feet. I didn't know that guy could hit anything further than 425.
Yeah, right? Longest of his career. That was impressive.
Right. And you know what? We were speaking a couple months ago, wondering if, you know, Ahmed Rosario is going to be traded, and is he going to hold that shortstop position for a long time? And, you know, is this really making room just for Andres Jimenez and Gabriel Arias in the future? Like, I think Ahmed Rosario has solidified his spot with this team for, as long as we're going to keep him. So he's playing lights out ball defensively, offensively. I'm really liking what I'm seeing out of him.
Yeah, it was nice to see something other than singles from him. So it was good to see, between Monday today, him getting hot. That you got Stephen Kwan with a 17-game hit streak, and Ahmed hitting bombs now. That's a pretty good top of your lineup right in front of Jose Ramirez. So
yeah,
nice to take this series from the Diamondbacks today, because obviously you got the tough Houston Astros coming in this weekend, but luckily the Twins play the Blue Jays for 4 starting tomorrow. So at least they don't have an easy matchup while we're out here probably getting steamrolled by Justin Verlander and Framber Valdez.
Luis Garcia, Christian Javier, that starting pitching lineup, like, good luck to the New York Yankees if they actually think they're going to a World Series this year.
I was shocked they traded Jordan Montgomery, just side note, for Harrison Bader. That was an interesting move there.
They're a trashy, classless organization. And, I smile at every mistake they make and every loss I see. I can't stand the Yankees. For any of the listeners who know, I live in New York and despise them. So, today watching Garrett Cole get lit up, I actually texted one of my friends who I was working in the office with a couple years back. And I was just like, out of this season, the Cleveland Guardians and the New York Yankees are going to end up with the same thing, a division title, and that's it. So, hopefully, obviously I want to see us make a run, but, just being realistic here, it's just going to be a lot of fun. But, let's just roll right into today's game. For anybody who missed it, we won 7-4 today. Shane Bieber went out, was his good old self, pitched a good, 7 innings today, I think, of 2-run baseball. Unfortunately, gave up a 2-run bomb, but we were able to come back in the following inning to pad the scoreboard a little bit. But Tyler Freeman, we mentioned it earlier, first major league hit in the 6th inning, and Jose and Oscar had RBI doubles today, a couple long balls from the squad. I think rolling into Houston, our confidence is got to be pretty high, especially after this trade deadline, seeing the moves that we did or didn't make, I should say. I think this team knows that these are the guys that they're going to be going to battle with every single day. And Houston hasn't necessarily been the hottest team in the majors, right? They were recently swept by the Oakland A's about a week ago and have just been, sort of patching it up. I forget who they were playing this week, but Boston, right? I think they lost a game or two, right? It was a 3-game series. I know they lost one of them. So let's just, Justin Verlander is going to be a tough task, but, you can get at guys like Framber Valdez and Luis Garcia, right? Especially,
they're going to be like, hey, we just beat Shane McClanahan. Bring on Justin Bieber. Like, anything can happen.
Yeah. Justin Verlander, he's going to be tough. But look, 14-3 record, 181 ERA. If there's a pitcher that we've seen more than anybody in the league, it's this guy, right? He spent years and years and years with the Tigers, and we've seen him a bunch on the Astros as well. So it'll sort of be familiar footing there for us. But so we got Plesac going tomorrow on Friday. It's probably going to be Brian Shaw. It's undecided as of right now versus Framber Valdez. Saturday and Sunday, we're going to, cap it out with Cal Quantrill and Tristan McKenzie versus Luis Garcia and Christian Javier. And then after this series, we got, we're headed to Detroit for 3, and then we're going to Toronto for 3. So 6 games after this 4-game set with the Astros. Who knows what's going to happen, but, it's looking good right now.
Yeah, let's hope everybody's vaccinated heading into Canada next week. But over the next couple weeks, I'm going to be really curious how they get all these young guys at bats. I'm thinking that it's going to be like a Nolan Jones, Oscar Gonzalez out, platoon in right field.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Josh Naylor's going to DH a lot more just to keep his legs fresh heading down the stretch. Owen Miller's probably going to kind of turn into that Ernie Clement role. He can play all over the infield. And, I hope they give Will Benson a serious shot at first base, because I think his bat could, his bat can play up here. I think he could be special, but by far, Tyler Freeman's the guy I'm most excited for. He's been playing third base lately down in AAA. He came up as a shortstop. He showed today he has the arm to play third. I know there's been some concerns about his arm, which I think are kind of unwarranted. He looked comfortable and fine over there today, but I think that could make a big difference if you could spell Jose couple times a week, let him DH, get off his legs. And, if Tyler Freeman can handle himself over there, and, Ahmed Rosario basically never gets a day off himself. So Tyler Freeman can also play short and second base. So,
great call.
Spell guys like Ahmed Rosario and Andres Jimenez, because I think they have enough usable bodies who can come in and help this team win. That, they should be able to keep guys fresh.
Yeah. And then one last thing before we wrap it up, just to keep an eye out for, I mentioned we were going up to Toronto for a 3-game series. I'm not sure it's public knowledge. I doubt it is, but we're going to have to see who is, the vaccination status of all these players. And
I bet Karinchak's not. I'm going to take a wild freaking guess there.
Well, hopefully, obviously not political at all. Hopefully everybody's vaxxed and is able to make that trip, and we can go and get a sweep out in Toronto. But I really wanted to thank everybody for joining the pod tonight. It's always a pleasure. I'm going to pass it off to my co-host Mel to take us away.
Yeah, go Guards. Let's hope for a split at least against the Astros, but fuck it, go win the series. Go Guards. We'll see you next week.